Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, in our last conversation about, we were talking about Mary. We're talking about the fourth commandment, but specifically I want to zone into the parts about Mary. And one of the things that you referenced to her was that she was the first disciple, the leading disciple, ultimately because she chose to follow God. And I wanted to ask a question that is not specifically about Mary, but more about the concept of being able to choose God. I think that if you asked many people out there, or the majority of people out there, they would say, yes, I would like to follow and do what's good. But the contrast is, I don't think many people know how to create opportunities where you could give someone the chance of saying, do you want to follow and do good or not? Maybe they do, and it's just not explicit, and that's why I'm looking for the wrong thing. But basically what I'm trying to get to is, how do we create opportunities to really make it so that we have these opportunities, so that someone else would have the opportunity, knowing we're not God. I mean, I know that I cannot send down the archangel Gabriel and talk to someone. I don't have that power or authority. But I'm assuming there are some things we can do as people to be able to create more opportunities for goodness to be able to flourish. So I bring that up because I'm sure that even as I say this sentence, people are coming up with 13 different answers. But I wanted to ask you, because I think it's something that's important, because I think there's a lot more people that will respond to, yes, I will, but they don't want to figure out how to create the opportunity. And the more, I believe the opportunities being created are the catalyst to the effect. So I have no idea if that's even right. That's just my personal thought process coming out here. And
the opportunity for
creating good, for the calling and listening to God, just as Mary said, yes, I'll do it. I think there's a lot of people that would say yes if an opportunity is presented to them, but most people don't know how to create an opportunity. Long story short.
Yeah, what's what are some of the things that interfere with that? This would be a place where Jordan Peterson's challenge, even describing Moses or Abraham as an infantilized adult sitting around in his cushy place eating grapes already peeled for him, this sort of image of self-indulgence. Are there people who have not taken the first step? So he would call that the call to adventure, and then how do you start that? I mean, so I think his sense of like, well, start by doing something. So let me call you right now to do something. And that's where, his sort of exhortation, like, put order somewhere in your life, clean your room, make your bed, start and start to pick up a load as heavy as you can carry and start to carry it. Go out of yourself, enter into a relationship and commit yourself to someone, be of service to someone. So those kinds of challenges, I think, are out there. I mean, I think really life also challenges us. There's the basic challenge of employment, which is helpful in terms of providing food for ourselves and shelter that gets us out of ourselves. And that's really, you can hear that as a call from God, like, go work for a living, as much as you're able to. Of course, people are in different situations with that. But for the vast majority of us, go work for a living and figure out what that is. So I think life does deal a lot of opportunities, and that's a starting point. And as we press into those things, then we start to discover, well, I could learn more of this, I could do more of that. This other opportunity opens up itself. But I think the problem is more likely that we are closed to hearing. So, and I think we have to even hear the Annunciation passage in that context. And that's why a lot of people will propose that Mary was already in prayer. So she's already open. She's already prepared to hear. And the archangel doesn't show up and overwhelm her freedom and force her to listen to this thing and put before her this challenge that she is forced to accept. It's rather in the much more gentle way that God does. He doesn't, I like to say he shouts the 10 commandments at us. That's what we get on Sinai and thunder and lightning. But his personal invitation to do good, to grow in holiness, to love beyond what might be sort of necessary from justice, that's a whispered voice, because otherwise he would overwhelm our freedom and what we offer would not be so meaningful. So all of that is to say, just to set the context of my feeling is not so much that people don't have the opportunity, is that people don't listen for the opportunity and they don't look for the opportunity. I feel like it's not hard to find. There's so many needs. There's so many ways to love. There's so many ways to get out of ourselves. There's so many ways to serve. All of us have certain resources that can be put in the service of others. And if we challenge ourselves, okay, my goal today is to love more, sacrifice more, serve more, you'll find a lot of opportunities presenting themselves, just waiting for you to actually be looking for them.
So going through the answer, it starts pretty commonly with being in a prayerful state and open to listening, and then looking. So analyzing what it is that we already have in terms of talents, skills, and abilities, and leaning into them. Well, that's a pretty straightforward answer. And I think that the other part you say there is that the starting point was also having some momentum, starting to do stuff. And as we look around, I think that our current world has done a very good job of spinning us into motionlessness. And what I mean by that is we being most Americans, most Westerners really, are consumed by our phones. And it doesn't matter what conversation we're in, if we feel or hear the thing ding, most of us have an impulse to go to it, to go to the phone, regardless of what the application is talking to us. Call, text, random other app, social media, whatever. We're called to it. And we will stop whatever we're doing to spin into this, really 9 times out of 10, time-consuming, low-productive toy. It's not even a tool anymore. It's a toy that our phones have become. And we talked in the past about how that used to be the television. But the difference was most of us do not carry a television around with us 24/7. But there are many people out there that if they don't know where their phone is, it's a crisis. Which, if you think of the difference of generations, is wildly compelling. 100 years ago, they didn't have electricity really, and now we can't even handle with something if our battery dies. And I didn't know that this thought process was coming out here when I asked this question in the first place. But in a lot of ways, it seems that these devices, as noble as they might have been intended to be in the first place, really are slowing that motivation down. And it takes an incredible amount of willpower, forethought, probably a couple of other things going in there to be able to separate ourselves fully and intentionally from this societal crutch. And I'm sure every generation has felt like they've had their own, and I'm not special in saying this. I'm just marveling at how efficient and good it is at what it does, which is distracting us from many other things, many other things. And I wanted to highlight that because, again, if we're going to do good and have momentum in our life, you have to be moving and not get sidetracked. And it just seems that this is one of many things that are going on in our society that are slowing us all down. In this case, mentally, probably relationship wise as well. And it just seems something that is not really ever discussed, but it's something that, I mean, I witness firsthand, both with myself and those around me, all the time. You know, you're in the middle of something that's important with someone else, but because you got a notification, you pause, you look at it, and then you resume like that 10 seconds never happened. Well, a lot happened in your brain during that 10 seconds, including disconnecting from the conversation you were in, and hoping that it'll just expecting people to wait for you to pick back up. So simultaneously telling the other person you're not as important and being selfish that, you know, what is in my phone is more important than this. So lots of negative ways of looking at that, I suppose. But I also don't think it's that inaccurate from what has become a regular and common event in society. So, Father, I didn't know I was going down that road. I apologize for that, but that was the thought process that came to me from your answer of we have to have a momentum to go do change and impetus in the good.
Yeah, there is actually quite a bit of study about the effect of distraction. Um, One book that I read was called Stolen Focus. There are many out there that track the results in the brain, and the author of that particular book pointed out that our attention span, even much longer ago than cell phones, has been diminishing for decades. And there are ways that we can be intentional about recovering that. It's more of a problem for some people than others, but yeah, having a good cell phone hygiene is one way to be present to life. And I think in general, there's why is distraction also so attractive? Um, I think we have a lot that we want to escape from. I'd rather be looking at my phone than paying attention to this meeting. I'd rather be looking at whatever the next possible little bit of information or connection from somebody that I actually care about, as opposed to listening to my boss and whatever problems he has. I think there are a lot of things that we want to escape from. And that constant escape is a real problem. That leads to infantilization. That leads to adult children who don't have the capacity to commit. We grow in maturity through sacrifice, and we have to be willing to sacrifice the present for the future. That's really one of the things that sets us apart as human beings, and that's ultimately the way that we express love and that we grow, as we sacrifice one thing for the sake of another. We will the good of the other. We place others first. We sacrifice for our community, our family, and the willingness and capacity to sacrifice is really critical. So it is, in a way, an act of love. It's certainly a sacrifice to not respond to the being on your cell phone, or even just to turn off the notifications altogether. I have some of those intentional moments. I'm usually the one teaching, and so I'm in that position a little less, but sometimes in a classroom setting, I'm in a position that I can do not focus on my, do not disturb on my phone and focus, or not. And I feel the decision, like, okay, I'm really going to commit my attention pretty fully to the person who's talking at the front of the room. And I don't necessarily want to do that, but I know that it's good, to listen to the rector deliver the state of the seminary address, even though I know what the state of the seminary is. I'm living in it and I know what's going on, but he deserves my attention, and this organization needs my commitment, which has to do with not just indulging my own personal whims and the parts of my life that might be more entertaining in the moment. So some of those kinds of things are aspects of maturity that we do need to talk about more, and I think we need to foster more. And as I see students who need to be told these things, like, no, it's not okay. yeah, I know you have your laptop in class and you're taking notes on it. And I know that you're also surfing the web half the time. And that's an act of disrespect, and it's an act of fragmented attention that's going to lead to the diminishing value of this class, this professor, and this whole experience of seminary, college, whatever. And so make the sacrifice and give your attention. That's a real offering. So yeah, I think those are important topics that we need to probably focus on a bit more.
Yeah, and it does have a failure rate. Just using that example, what happens? Well, why should I put all into preparing for this class if half of them aren't even going to be paying attention? And who ultimately suffers? The ones who were paying attention, because now that there is a lower diminish around, and you're right, it does take a degree of internal fortitude and strength to say, you know what, I'm still going to bring my all and do this, even if I'm not getting the results that I did even teaching this class 3 years ago gave. And I think that there is something to that. And, we can see it in health, I suppose, that if you want to live a healthy diet, it takes a lot of thought and forethought about what it is that you're going to eat, purchase, and all that. And society is not geared that way. Society is geared to things that will be, long story short, be addictive to, and most of those addictive agents make you unhealthy. Paraphrasing health in a very broad sentence there. And I think that when we look at this, is that our phones are doing the same thing just with our brains. And whether it be this or TMZ from the generation before the phones took off and all of the junk content there. And like I said, I'm sure every generation had their example, which led to diminishing attention spans throughout. And it just seems so important, but yet, as you said, no one's paying attention to it because everyone else is doing it. And that trap of everyone else is doing it is necessary and wrong at the same time. Like we're a social species. We need to be a part of the group, but we also need to do what's right and question what's going on with the group. And I feel that so few times things are getting questioned, such as the phones. And I say this knowing that the vast majority of the audience listening right now is doing so on their phones. So I'm not saying that the entire thing is evil by any stretch. And I'm not saying it's good just because you're listening to Father and I. What I'm saying is that what are you actually putting your attention to and getting your content in, and when are you doing it? I think that those questions and variables mean a lot there. And again, I apologize for doing such a turn from the initial conversation of how can we plant more good in the world. But I guess on the same hand, removing weeds from the garden also does make more room for good. So there's another way of looking at it. So, Father, we have about a minute left. I want to give you a chance to give any final thoughts that can propel us into next week.
Well, maybe just to return to that point, how can we do more good in the world? Give your attention to someone. That's an act of love, and love lasts forever. And the more that we sow the seeds of love, giving attention, making sacrifices, putting others first, just simple acts of service can make a tremendous difference. So never diminish the value of those acts of love, and insert more of those into your day.
Perfect. Well, we thank all of you for listening, and we'll be with you again next week.